The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The city outside Mark's small apartment buzzed faintly with distant sounds of traffic and occasional sirens. But inside, everything was still. Mark sat alone on his worn-out couch, staring at the flickering lights of his old television. He had just finished another long day at work, tired, exhausted, and ready to unwind with a simple evening. Yet, something felt different tonight. A subtle tension hung in the air, almost like the world was holding its breath. Mark rubbed his eyes and leaned back. He wasn't sure what it was. He had lived in this apartment for years, and nothing unusual had ever happened. His life was ordinary. Work, home, occasional friends' visits, that was it. But tonight, a faint knock on his door made him pause. It was soft. Almost too soft to notice. Mark frowned. Who could that be at this hour? He whispered to himself. He had no friends who visited late at night. Hesitant, he rose from the couch and walked slowly to the door. He peeked through the peephole but saw nothing. The hallway outside was empty, dimly lit by the flickering corridor lights. Then came the whisper. I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet. Mark froze. The voice was soft, delicate, almost fragile. It was human-like, yet there was something strange about it. He had no idea where it came from. He blinked, unsure if he had imagined it. But the whisper came again, this time clearer. I can help. I can make your life easier. Mark's heart raced. He didn't know why, but he felt both curious and cautious. Slowly, he opened the door, careful not to make any sudden movements. Standing there was a young girl, perhaps barely in her 20s. She was beautiful, her features delicate, almost ethereal, and her eyes shone with a strange light, as if they held secrets of another world. Her skin had a subtle shimmer, and her movements were graceful, almost unreal. Mark swallowed hard. Hello? He asked, unsure what to say. She smiled faintly but didn't speak. Instead, she stepped inside without hesitation. Her presence filled the room with a strange warmth. Mark wanted to ask her who she was, why she was here, but the words got stuck in his throat. Something about her was calming, yet mysterious. She moved slowly around the apartment, observing everything carefully. She opened the fridge, took out ingredients, and began cooking without asking for permission. Every action was precise, almost too perfect. Mark watched in silence, his curiosity growing. The smell of the food filled the small apartment, rich and inviting, yet unlike anything he had smelled before. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The girl didn't speak. She simply worked silently, moving from the kitchen to the living room, cleaning, arranging things, and making the apartment spotless. It was incredible, almost magical. Finally, she turned to Mark and whispered again, I can stay. If you want. I can make things better. Mark shook his head in disbelief. What are you? How do you know my apartment? His voice was a mix of confusion and awe. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes meeting his. I chose you, she said softly. I needed a place. I wanted to help. Mark couldn't understand. He wanted to ask more questions, but something about her presence made him pause. It was as if asking too much would break the fragile bubble of this moment. He nodded slowly. Okay, you can stay. For now. A faint smile appeared on her lips. She continued her work silently, yet the air around them felt lighter. Mark sat back on his couch watching her. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange sense of peace. Over the next few hours, Mark noticed things he had never realized before. She moved with elegance, her gestures almost hypnotic. Every action, every small movement, seemed intentional. She cleaned the apartment thoroughly, cooked meals that were delicious beyond words, and arranged things in a way that made everything feel organized and perfect. Mark tried to speak to her, asking questions about where she came from, how she could cook so well. How she knew what he needed before he even asked. But she only smiled faintly, sometimes whispering a few words. I am here to help. I am here to stay. Trust me. Night passed, and the city outside grew quieter. Mark finally lay down on his bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind was racing. Who was this girl? Why had she come to him? And why did he feel an unusual trust toward her, a sense that everything would be different now? He didn't have time to ponder more. A soft sound at the door made him sit up again. The girl stood there, hands folded, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She whispered, almost to herself, "They are coming." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "Who? What do you mean?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. She didn't answer. Instead, she motioned for him to stay quiet and walked toward the window. Outside, shadows moved. He couldn't see clearly, but it was enough to make him shiver. For the first time in his life, Mark realized that his world, once ordinary, mundane, and safe, was about to change. Something bigger, something dangerous, and something extraordinary had entered his life. The girl turned back to him, eyes full of a strange determination. "I will protect you. But your life will never be the same," she whispered. Mark nodded slowly, unsure if he was ready for what was coming. The night seemed to stretch endlessly, filled with unknown threats and unseen watchers. And yet, a small part of him, curious, adventurous, maybe even hopeful, felt a thrill. He realized that his life had already begun to change the moment he had opened the door to this mysterious visitor. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the faint sounds of the city and the girl's quiet movements. She prepared a simple meal and handed it to him. The flavors were unlike anything he had ever tasted. Each bite was comforting, yet it carried a subtle reminder that she was not like anyone he had known before. Mark tried to speak again, but the words failed him. Instead, he simply ate, feeling a strange bond forming between them. It was as if she had always been meant to be there, as if his life had been waiting for this moment without him knowing it. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the room, a sound almost musical, almost alien. The girl's eyes flickered, glowing brighter for a brief moment. Mark stared in awe. What is that?" he asked. "It's me," she whispered. "It's part of who I am. Don't be afraid. I am here to help, not harm." Mark nodded slowly, trying to process everything. He didn't fully understand, but he felt a strange sense of safety. Somehow he knew that as long as she was there, nothing ordinary could touch him. But the feeling of calm was short-lived. A sudden noise from the hallway made both of them tense. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Someone was outside, moving closer. The girl's eyes narrowed. "They are here," she whispered again. "You must trust me." Mark's heart pounded. He wanted to ask questions, to understand, but the sense of urgency was overwhelming. He realized that whatever was coming was serious, dangerous, and beyond his comprehension. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. Then, a knock, louder this time, almost commanding, echoed through the apartment. Mark froze. He looked at the girl. She didn't move, didn't panic. Her calmness was unsettling yet reassuring. "They know," she said softly. "And soon. They will try to take me away. You must be ready." Mark didn't know what to do. His life had been simple, ordinary, predictable. Now it had become a world of mystery, suspense, and danger. And somehow, in the midst of fear, he felt alive. He realized with a strange clarity that opening the door to this mysterious girl had changed everything. His life, once dull and uneventful, had become extraordinary. The ordinary world he knew was gone. In its place was something new, something thrilling, terrifying, and magical. The night stretched on, filled with whispers, shadows, and unspoken tension. Mark stayed awake, watching, waiting, and wondering. He didn't know what would happen next, But one thing was certain. His life would never be the same. As the first rays of dawn touched the city, the girl finally sat beside him, her presence calm and steady. She didn't speak much, only whispered once more, "I am here, and I am not leaving." Mark nodded slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear, curiosity, and anticipation. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, what dangers lurked, or what adventures awaited. But he knew one thing for sure. His life had been touched by something extraordinary. The mysterious visitor, the alien girl, had arrived. And somehow, just somehow, she had changed everything. The morning light seeped through the thin curtains, casting long, soft stripes across Mark's small apartment. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. Sleep had evaded him most of the night. His mind replayed every detail from yesterday: the girl at the door, the whispered words, the strange glow of her eyes. Every sound of the city outside felt louder, sharper, as if the world itself were warning him that nothing would ever be the same. She moved silently around the apartment, already busy with her morning routine. Her hands moved with precision as she cleaned the counters and organized the kitchen. She didn't speak much, only soft hums that seemed to fill the air with calm energy. But Mark noticed the tension in her movements, the way her eyes constantly scanned the windows and the hallway outside. Finally, he found the courage to ask, "Who are you really? And why are they after you?" She paused and looked at him, her eyes holding a depth that made him uneasy. "I can't tell you everything," she said softly. "Not yet. There are things you aren't ready to understand. But I can show you enough to keep you safe." Mark swallowed hard. His life had been simple, dull even, before she arrived. Now he was standing at the edge of something he didn't fully comprehend, a world beyond human understanding. "Safe from what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, her glow faint but steady. "There are others. Ones who follow my kind. They don't understand humans. They don't care about humans. They only care about capturing me." Mark's heart raced. "Your kind?" he repeated. "You're not human?" She shook her head gently. "No, but I am like you in many ways. I can think, feel, and choose. That is why I stayed. That is why I came to you." Mark looked around the apartment, suddenly noticing every shadow, every small detail that had seemed normal before. Something about her presence made him hyper-aware. The faint hum she carried, the shimmer in her skin, and the strange calmness that contrasted with the tension outside. Everything told him this was no ordinary girl. Before he could ask more, a soft tap at the window made him freeze. He turned slowly and saw nothing at first, just the quiet city street. But then, in the reflection of the glass, he noticed a faint silhouette moving across the hallway outside. His heart skipped a beat. "They're here," she whispered, almost like the words were part of her breath. "We have to move." Mark didn't know what to do. His mind raced with questions and fear. "Move? Where? What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his hand, her touch light but firm. "Trust me, come." He followed her instinctively, not fully understanding why. She led him to a small storage closet near the kitchen. Inside, the space was cramped, but she seemed to know exactly what to do. With a swift motion, she pressed a hidden button on the wall, and a section of the closet swung open to reveal a narrow tunnel. Mark's eyes widened. "A tunnel? Where does this go?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they cannot find us," she said simply. Her tone was calm, yet it carried urgency. "We don't have much time." The city noises faded as they moved through the tunnel. It was cool and dark, the walls smooth and metallic, unlike anything Mark had seen before. The air carried a faint scent, sweet and unfamiliar, and the faint glow from her skin illuminated the path ahead. As they walked, Mark tried to process everything. "Wait, you have been living here?" He asked, "How is this even possible?" She didn't answer immediately, but after a moment, she said softly, "I have been hiding, watching, learning. My people sent hunters to retrieve me, but I chose to escape. I chose to find humans. And I found you." Mark's mind reeled. His life had been simple, yet now he felt like a small part of something immense, something that stretched far beyond the walls of his apartment. "Why me?" he asked, voice trembling. "Why not someone else?" She smiled faintly, her eyes glowing brighter for an instant. "Something about you. Your heart. It's different. Humans usually don't notice the little things. You do. That is why I came." Mark felt a strange warmth at her words, but fear still gnawed at the edges of his mind. He could sense danger closing in, unseen yet palpable. Suddenly, the tunnel widened into a small underground room, lit by soft bioluminescent panels on the walls. She led him to a chair and gestured for him to sit. "Rest for a moment," she said. "You need strength. Soon we may have to fight or run. Either way, you need to be ready." Mark sank into the chair, exhaustion washing over him. His mind spun with questions, fears, and a strange sense of wonder. What are they going to do?" he asked. "They will try to take me, my kind. They believe I have knowledge that they want. Knowledge that humans cannot even understand. They don't care about the consequences. They only want control." Mark shivered. "And if they get you?" Her gaze softened, almost sad. "Then your life will be changed in ways you cannot imagine. But that is why I am here. To protect you, to guide you, and to make sure you survive." For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hum of the lights and their breathing. Mark realized he had never felt so alive and so terrified at the same time. His ordinary world had vanished, replaced by a reality that was thrilling, dangerous, and utterly unfamiliar. She crouched beside him, her voice barely audible. "I need to teach you something. Something important. If they find us, you must know how to defend yourself, how to stay hidden, how to think beyond normal humans. Can you do that?" Mark nodded, though his hands shook. He didn't fully understand, but he knew he had no choice. "Yes, I'll do it," he said. The hours passed in lessons and explanations. She showed him simple ways to move silently, how to notice small changes in their environment, and how to anticipate danger. Every tip, every instruction felt strange yet logical. Mark realized that his mind had been dull and ordinary before now. It was opening to new ways of thinking. By the time the lessons paused, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows through the tunnel. The girl stood near a small console on the wall, pressing buttons that lit up the panels in soft waves. "We have little time before they find us," she said. "We need to leave this place tonight." Mark's heart raced. "Leave? Where can we go?" She smiled faintly, almost wistfully. "Somewhere far, somewhere no one will follow. But it is dangerous, and you may not be ready for all of it." Mark swallowed hard. "I don't care. I'll go anywhere if it keeps you safe." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed a small smile. "Good. That is why I chose you. Not just for survival, but because you care." The tunnel's entrance loomed ahead, the faint sound of the city above now replaced by echoes from the underground walls. She led him carefully, signaling when to stop, when to move. Every sound seemed amplified in the quiet, every shadow a possible threat. And then they heard it, the faintest whisper, almost too soft to notice. "There they are," she said, her eyes narrowing. "They are close. Stay calm, stay quiet." Mark's heart pounded. He followed her instinctively, trusting her movements, her presence, and her guidance. The unknown hunters of her kind were out there, just beyond the walls, just beyond his comprehension. The thought was terrifying, yet exhilarating. As they navigated a narrow passage, She suddenly stopped and pressed her hand against a smooth wall. A section slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. "Inside," she whispered. Quickly, Mark stepped in, heart racing, and felt the walls close silently behind him. The air inside the compartment was cool, almost antiseptic, and the faint glow of her skin illuminated the small space. They huddled together, waiting, silent except for their breathing. Minutes passed, but to Mark, it felt like hours. Every creak, every subtle vibration made his heart leap. He wondered what these hunters were, why they wanted her, and how far his life had shifted in such a short time. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm yet filled with urgency. "We are not safe yet, but soon we will move to the surface. There, we can blend in, and then we plan our next steps. You must trust me, Mark. Everything depends on it." He nodded, feeling a strange combination of fear, awe, and determination. He didn't understand the world he had stepped into, but he knew he could not turn back. His life, ordinary as it had been, had vanished. And now in its place was a world of secrets, shadows, and the girl who had changed everything. The first hints of evening light began to filter through the hidden tunnel openings, and she finally relaxed slightly. "Soon," she whispered, "we will move. But you must remember, stay quiet, stay alert, and trust me. No matter what happens, we survive together." Mark swallowed hard, knowing that his life had already changed. He was no longer just a man in a small apartment. He was part of something bigger, something dangerous, something extraordinary. And somehow, he knew that whatever came next would test everything he thought he knew about the world, about life, and about himself. The city outside slept under a quiet blanket of darkness, but inside the hidden underground tunnels, Mark's heart raced with tension. For hours he had followed the girl through the twisting corridors, her glow lighting the path like a faint lighthouse in the black. Every step echoed softly against the metallic walls, but the distant sounds of movement above reminded him that they were not alone. "They are close," she whispered, her voice calm but urgent. "They know I am here. We must reach the surface before they realize where we are hiding." Mark nodded, trying to steady his breathing. He had never been in a situation like this before. His world had shifted completely, from ordinary apartment life to running through alien tunnels with a girl who wasn't human. And yet, for some reason, he trusted her completely. She paused at a junction, pressing her hand against the wall. The panels shimmered briefly, and a hidden door slid open. "This way," she said softly. "It leads to an old service exit. No one comes here anymore." The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. Mark's heart thumped as every sound seemed magnified. He glanced at her side profile. The faint glow of her skin illuminated her face in a way that made her look both beautiful and otherworldly. He realized that in all this chaos, she remained calm, almost untouchable. Suddenly, a low vibration ran through the walls. Mark froze. "Did you feel that?" He whispered. She nodded. "They are tracking us. They can sense movement and energy. We must move faster." They hurried down the passage. Ahead, the faint outline of the exit grew visible, a small metallic door partially covered by shadows. The girl pressed her palm against a panel next to it. Sparks of soft blue light danced across the surface, and with a quiet hiss, the door swung open. The night air rushed in, carrying the scent of the city. Mark blinked, overwhelmed by the sudden openness after hours underground. Above them, the streets were dim and mostly empty. The city lights flickered weakly, but they provided just enough cover for them to move. "Stay close," she whispered. "If they see us, it's over." Mark followed, staying low, blending with the shadows. His mind raced. Who were they? Why did they want her? And how had his life become entangled in something so dangerous, so extraordinary? Suddenly, a shadow moved across the street. Mark's breath caught. "Did you see that?" She nodded, her glow dimming slightly. "Yes, hunters. They are fast, but they will not find us here." "Not yet." They pressed forward, moving through alleys and side streets. Every corner seemed like a potential trap, every sound a warning. Mark realized that the world above, the city he thought he knew, was now a labyrinth of danger. After several tense minutes, they reached a small rooftop overlooking an abandoned warehouse. She motioned for him to climb up first. "From here, we can plan our next move," she said. Mark climbed carefully, feeling the wind on his face. The city stretched endlessly before him, but he barely noticed the buildings or streets. His focus was entirely on her, and the feeling that his life was now irreversibly changed. Once they were both on the rooftop, she crouched, studying the streets below. "They will not stop," she said quietly. "But there is a place we can go. A safe house. Far enough that they cannot track me easily. But we must move before they realize we have escaped." Mark's heart pounded. "How will we get there?" "We can't just walk through the streets. They'll see us." She smiled faintly. "I have a way. But you must trust me completely." "Can you do that?" Mark nodded. He didn't fully understand, but he had learned by now that trust was the only way to survive. She stepped to the edge of the rooftop and pressed a small device against the metal. A faint blue light pulsed, forming a circular portal that shimmered like liquid glass. "Step through," she said, her voice calm. "It will take us to the safe house. Do not hesitate." Mark swallowed hard and stepped forward. The moment he entered, the world around him warped, and in an instant, they were gone from the rooftop, transported through a shimmering, dizzying corridor of light and sound. When the motion stopped, they were in a small, hidden building, barely furnished but secure. Mark looked around, feeling a strange mix of relief and disbelief. It worked. "We're safe?" She nodded. "For now. But they will come. And they will not give up easily. That is why you must learn quickly, Mark. You have already started, but soon. Everything depends on your actions." Mark's hands trembled, but he straightened up. "Then teach me. I'll do whatever it takes." The girl studied him for a long moment, her eyes glowing faintly. "Good. That is what I needed to hear. They will not expect a human to fight. And that is why you can help. I can guide you, but the rest comes from your choices." Over the next hours, she trained him, teaching him how to move silently, how to detect unusual energy signatures, and even basic defense techniques. Each lesson pushed him beyond what he thought possible. His muscles ached, his mind raced, but a strange thrill coursed through him. He was no longer just a man. He was becoming part of something bigger, part of a world hidden from ordinary eyes. As night deepened, they took a short break. The girl prepared a simple meal, silently, as Mark watched. The food was warm and comforting, yet there was a strange quality to it, something that seemed to infuse strength into his tired body. "I never thought I'd be here," Mark said quietly. "Running from, I don't even know what. Fighting things I can't understand." She looked at him, her eyes softening. "None of this is easy. But you chose to trust me. That alone changes things. Most humans would have run away or frozen in fear. Did not." Mark felt a strange sense of pride, but it was mingled with fear. "And if we fail? If they catch us?" Her gaze hardened. "Then we adapt. We fight, we survive. That is all any of us can do." They sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the city. For a brief moment, it felt like the world had stopped, holding its breath along with them. But the peace was fleeting. A sudden vibration shook the building. The faintest whisper of sound, almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable. "They found us," she whispered. Her glow brightened, illuminating the room. "They know we are here." Mark's heart leapt. What do we do? She grabbed his hand. We run, now, and this time, there is no turning back. They moved quickly, leaving the small safe house and slipping into the shadows of the city streets. The hunters were close. Their presence felt rather than seen. Every step carried danger, every turn a potential ambush. Then, without warning, the hunters appeared. Figures tall and imposing, their forms partially obscured by darkness. They moved with unnatural speed, eyes glowing faintly in the night. The girl stepped in front of Mark, her glow intensifying, creating a faint shield of light around them. "Stay behind me," she commanded. "Do not interfere unless I tell you." Mark nodded, heart pounding. He could barely breathe as the hunters advanced. But even as fear gripped him, a strange determination filled him too. He would not run. He could not let her face this alone. The first hunter lunged, moving faster than any human could. The girl shifted, her movements fluid, precise, and impossible to follow. She dodged, countered, and struck, sending the hunter staggering back. Mark watched in awe. Her strength, her speed, her control, it was beyond anything he had imagined. Another hunter approached from behind. Without thinking, Mark lifted a heavy pipe from the ground and swung it instinctively. To his surprise, it connected, staggering the hunter momentarily. A surge of confidence filled him. Perhaps with her guidance he could survive this. The girl glanced at him briefly, eyes soft but determined. "Good, keep going. Trust your instincts." Together, they moved through the streets, dodging, striking, and evading. The hunters were relentless, but the girl's strategies and Mark's quick learning kept them one step ahead. Finally, they reached the edge of the city, where an old freight train lay abandoned. The girl pressed a device against it, creating another shimmering portal. "Through here." Quickly. Mark didn't hesitate. He leapt through, feeling the familiar dizzying rush of light and sound. When he emerged, they were on a quiet hillside, far from the city lights. The night was calm, almost serene, yet the adrenaline still thrummed in his veins. The girl turned to him, her glow softening. "We made it. For now." Mark looked around, catching his breath. He realized that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just Mark, the man in a small apartment. He was part of a story that stretched across worlds, filled with danger, wonder, and the girl who had entered his life with a whisper, "I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet." But even in this quiet moment, Mark knew the danger was not over. The hunters would not give up easily. And the girl, the mysterious visitor who had changed his life, she carried secrets that could alter everything he had ever known. He glanced at her, determination burning in his chest. "I don't know what comes next, but I'll be ready." Her eyes met his, glowing softly in the moonlight. "Good," she whispered, "because the night is far from over, and soon you will understand the true scale of what we are facing." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying a faint hum, almost like a warning. Mark shivered, not from cold, but from the realization that his life was now irrevocably intertwined with hers. And somewhere, in the shadows, the hunters were still out there, watching, waiting, and coming closer.